The music echoed through the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers scattering light across polished marble floors. Laughter rippled through the crowd as a group of executives and their families gathered near the stage. Among them, a young woman named Vanessa Cole, daughter of the company's director, smirked as her eyes landed on a man sweeping in the corner. "Hey, look at him!" Vanessa whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "The janitor thinks he belongs here. Maybe he should dance instead of sweeping." Her words struck like a slap in the quiet corner where the man worked. His name was Ethan Hayes, a man in his late 30s, tall but modest in posture, wearing a simple gray uniform. He paused, broom in hand, as the laughter spread around the room. Vanessa, with her sharp dress and sharper tongue, stepped forward, tapping her heels against the floor. "Tell you what," she said, eyes gleaming with arrogance. "Why don't we have a little challenge, a dance-off, unless, of course, you're too beneath us for that?" The room buzzed with whispers. Some people laughed. Others exchanged uneasy glances. For Ethan, time froze. His heart pounded, humiliation burning through him. He wasn't just being mocked for his job. He was being mocked for his existence. He wanted to disappear, but something inside him stirred. Imagine being laughed at in front of hundreds, treated like you're invisible until someone dares to drag you into the spotlight for sport. That was Ethan's moment. A man with nothing was suddenly challenged, humiliated, and cornered. What no one knew was that this janitor carried a secret, a rhythm, a story, and a strength that could turn the night upside down. Are you enjoying our stories? Where are you watching from? Please like and subscribe to this channel so we can grow together. Ethan tightened his grip on the broom. His instinct told him to walk away, but Vanessa's eyes held him there. The entire ballroom waited. If he refused, he'd forever be remembered as the weak janitor who couldn't face a spoiled heiress. "All right," Ethan said softly, voice steady despite the storm inside. "If that's what you want!" Gasps filled the air. Vanessa blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected him to accept. The DJ, amused by the tension, switched the track to something lively. The beat filled the air. Vanessa flicked her hair back, strutted forward, and began moving with practiced precision. Her dance was polished, rehearsed, the kind of performance designed for attention. People clapped, encouraging her. Ethan stood still, broom in hand, his eyes lowered. For a moment it seemed he wouldn't move at all. Vanessa spun dramatically, then sneered at him. "What's the matter?" Afraid something shifted in Ethan's expression. Slowly he set the broom aside. His shoulders relaxed, his body swayed, and then he moved, not with stiffness, not with fear, but with raw, fluid rhythm that silenced the crowd. His steps were sharp, yet graceful, his body flowing like water with every beat. Each movement told a story of struggle, of hidden talent, of a man who had once belonged to a different world. Gasps replaced laughter. Vanessa faltered. Her polished routine suddenly looked shallow against the authenticity of Ethan's movements. The crowd erupted, clapping, cheering, even whistling, as the janitor they once ignored commanded the floor. And then in a move no one expected, Ethan extended his hand toward Vanessa. The same hand that had swept the corners of the building now reached for the heiress who mocked him. The room held its breath. For Ethan, that moment was more than a dance. It was a decision, a choice not to hide, not to let others define him by the uniform he wore. But what would Vanessa do? Would she laugh, refuse, walk away? Or would she take his hand and discover the truth behind the janitor she had ridiculed? The music played on. The silence stretched. All eyes were on her as the lights shimmered and the crowd waited. Vanessa hesitated, her manicured hand trembling ever so slightly. Then, almost against her own will, she reached forward, fingers brushing his. And in that fragile touch began a story that would change both their lives forever. The air inside the ballroom was charged heavy with the tension of two hands brushing together. Vanessa Cole's lips tightened as her fingers rested against Ethan's. The crowd leaned closer, their whispers mingling with the rhythm of the music. It was supposed to be a joke, a mockery. She hadn't expected him to move like that, hadn't expected him to silence a room with nothing but his steps. Her pulse quickened, a strange discomfort rising in her chest. Ethan's grip was steady, firm, but not forceful. "Shall we?" he asked quietly. The arrogance she wore like perfume faltered for a breath, but she masked it quickly with a smirk. "Don't think this means anything. You're just keeping up with me." But when they moved together, Vanessa stumbled. His rhythm guided hers effortlessly, his presence grounding the music in a way her rehearsed choreography never could. Laughter, the cruel kind she'd aimed at him earlier, had vanished. The crowd wasn't mocking anymore. They were cheering. For Ethan, each step was a release, a reminder of who he used to be before life reduced him to cleaning floors. Once upon a time, dance had been his passion, his language. But dreams didn't pay rent. Responsibility had forced him into a job where no one noticed his hands unless they were carrying a mop. Now every eye was on him and on her. Vanessa hated it. She was used to being adored, admired. Tonight, for the first time, the attention wasn't hers to own. It belonged to the janitor. When the song ended, the applause was deafening. Ethan bowed his head, slightly stepped back and returned to his broom as if nothing had happened. Vanessa stood, frozen cheeks flushed with something she couldn't name. Her father, Richard Cole, the company's director, clapped politely, but his eyes burned with embarrassment. Later, as the crowd dispersed toward dinner, he pulled Vanessa aside. "What on earth was that?" His voice was sharp, controlled the way it always was when he scolded her in private. "I was just having fun," Vanessa muttered. "Fun? You made a spectacle of yourself with a janitor, no less." His jaw clenched. "Do you have any idea what people will say about our family?" Her throat tightened. For all her bravado, Vanessa still lived under her father's shadow. She wanted his approval more than she ever admitted even to herself. Across the room, Ethan swept quietly, as though nothing had happened, but his chest ached with the weight of old wounds. He hadn't asked for this moment, hadn't wanted to be the center of attention. Yet a spark had been reignited inside him, one he thought had died years ago. Still, he knew better than to dream. He was a janitor. She was the daughter of a man who signed his paycheck. Their worlds weren't meant to collide, but fate wasn't done with them. The next morning, gossip spread through the office like wildfire. Employees whispered about how the janitor outshone the director's daughter. Some laughed, others admired him, but the story reached places Ethan never wanted it to. During his lunch break, he overheard two executives chuckling near the cafeteria. "Did you see Cole's face last night?" His daughter humiliated by the janitor. Priceless. Vanessa, walking past, froze. Their laughter pierced her pride like a blade. She clenched her fist and stormed away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. When she turned the corner, she collided with Ethan. Papers scattered, and for a moment their eyes locked. She saw something in his gaze. Steady, unshaken, almost kind. It infuriated her. "You think this is funny?" She snapped, her voice trembling more from shame than anger. Ethan crouched to gather the papers, his tone calm. "I don't think any of this is funny. I didn't want a scene last night, but you asked me to dance." Her cheeks burned. "You embarrassed me." He handed the papers back to her. "I didn't embarrass you. You embarrassed yourself." "I just danced." His words, simple yet undeniable, echoed long after she walked away. That night, Vanessa lay awake, replaying the scene over and over. The way the crowd had cheered for him, the way he had moved with such confidence, and the way her father's disappointment had cut her deeper than any applause could heal. Ethan, meanwhile, sat in his small apartment, staring at old photographs, a younger version of himself, on a stage trophies lined on a shelf. A dreamer before reality pressed its weight onto his shoulders. He had buried that life years ago. But after last night, the soil covering his dreams no longer felt so heavy. Neither of them knew it yet, but the challenge had only just begun, and soon the lines between pride and vulnerability, between arrogance and humility, between janitor and heiress would blur beyond recognition. The following week, Vanessa tried to forget the incident. She buried herself in her routines, designer meetings, charity luncheons, and endless nights out with her social circle. Yet whispers clung to her like perfume she couldn't wash off. "Isn't she the one the janitor outdanced?" someone murmured at a cafe table when she walked past. "She looks so small next to him," another said, not realizing she could hear. Each word chipped away at the armor she'd spent years building. Vanessa had always believed she was untouchable, immune to ridicule, but this time the humiliation spread far beyond her control. At work, Ethan moved with his usual quiet diligence. He avoided eye contact, kept his head down, and said little. But even in silence, he had become a story. The janitor who danced the man who stood tall when the heiress faltered. One afternoon, as Vanessa left her father's office, she saw Ethan scrubbing the marble floor. She should have walked past. Instead, she paused. "You think people admire you now, don't you?" Her tone dripped with accusation. Ethan sat back on his heels, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked up calm as ever. "Admiration doesn't feed me, Miss Cole. I just do my job." The simplicity of his words unsettled her. No defense, no apology, just truth. For a moment she didn't know what to say, but her pride wouldn't let her walk away defeated. "You should know your place." Ethan rose slowly to his feet. "Not intimidating, not aggressive, just steady. And you should know yours. Being above someone doesn't make you better than them." Her breath caught. No one spoke to her like that, not even her father. She spun on her heel and left her heart pounding. Yet instead of anger, something else gnawed at her. A strange, uncomfortable respect. That night, Ethan returned home to his modest apartment on the outskirts of the city. The walls were bare, saved for a few photographs tucked into a cracked frame. One photo showed him years ago, on stage, mid-spin, his body alive with movement. His partner beside him smiled radiant as the audience blurred in the background. He touched the photo, gently tracing the edges.